that is people like to say, well, haven't relationships always been the currency? I mean, we've always traded on relationships. And that's 100% true. But for me, the reason that I consider them new and important and so valuable now is because we can scale them 24/7. Because we can be involved in social media, making connections, networking, building community, um, getting close to people all the time. It's what keeps me awake at night. It's what keeps me from lack of sleep. You might see me tweeting in the middle of the night. Those are real tweets. I have an idea, and instead of rolling over the way I used to and writing something down, I'll throw it out on Twitter. And then by the time I wake up, I've got reactions to it, or maybe even before if I don't go back to sleep. So, a little bit about myself. I got involved in the digital space back in 1997 when I joined a company called Yo-Yo that was run by a guy that many of you may have heard of named Seth Godin. Now, at the time, I was living in Florida. I had moved down there after closing a business, and I decided that it was time to come back to New York. And I moved up, and I left my family at the time. I'm now divorced, but I left my ex and my kids down in Florida, and I moved in with my in-laws. So I don't know if any of you have ever tried that. My suggestion is, if you haven't, don't. If you have, take a deep breath. My in-laws, I don't know if you over in the UK are familiar with a show called the Seinfeld, but there's a family there named the Costanzas, and all they do is yell at each other. So I made sure to get out of the house early in the morning before anybody woke up, and I would get to Yo-Yo Dine early, around 6:30 a.m., and Seth was always there early, and I had the good fortune to spend a lot of time with him and to hear about permission marketing, which was a term he coined in 1998, before the article came out in Fast Company and before the book. And a lot of the ideas I've had about relationships started formulating then. Now, I want to warn you guys, my head is like a Twitter feed. One of the reasons I don't sleep at night. Ideas just pop into it all the time. So sometimes I can go off on a tangent. And if I do, hopefully, one of two things will happen. Either everyone will go along with it, or someone from EngageSciences will shoot me a little message and say, hey, Ted, you never finished what you were saying. Let's get back to it. So let's see if we can get started a little bit here and start talking about relationships and advocacy. And for me, successful social media is all about relationships. There are a large amount of companies out there that are doing great things in what I call campaign-based social media, which is no different than any marketing tool in the marketing toolkit. And that's all it ends up becoming when you do it that way. Now, that isn't to say that shouldn't happen, because these are great ways to connect with people. But for me, the highest return in relationship comes, from relationships. And the only way to do that is to connect with people. So let's look at the people that follow us. We call them fans, we call them friends, we call them followers. How do you view them, as an audience or an asset? Now, the word audience is something that we all use. I use the word audience. It's part of our lexicon. It's the way we talk. But in truth, the way we need to be looking at these people are as an asset. Let's think about our home or our car or anything that we hold of value that we try to make better over the time we have it. So you buy a home, and your hope is that over time you'll sell that home at a nice profit, use that money to either buy a better home or to help with the education of your kids, or possibly for your retirement. And what do you do with that home? You nurture it. You add value to it. You upgrade it. You make sure that it's in good shape. To me, that's the same way we have to start dealing with the people that follow us. We have to think of them as an asset. And as an asset, we want to make sure to add value to them. And how do you do that? You connect with them. You talk to them. You find out who they are. You do what I call look them in the eye digitally. Now let's think back to the first time you were taught about how to interact with people. You were either going on your first date, or you were going for an interview, or even in school when your parents were talking to you about how to engage and interact with your teachers. And what are you taught? You're taught to look people in the eye, to make sure they know you're paying attention to them. Don't be like us husbands are when we talk to our wives and we're looking over their shoulder to get the scores on the TV instead of actually paying attention. Because everybody wants people to pay attention to them. So to me, one of the most important things is how we look at those people. And to do it digitally, it means a little bit more work, because, when you go into somebody's office, I don't know about you, but the way I was taught and the way I train salespeople when I train them was immediately look around the office. Find things that are important to the person you're trying to connect with. See where they went to college. Look for photos of them and their family. See whether they're into fishing or they're into sailing or they're into skiing or something, some clue that you can take away from the things around them that tell you something about them. Because then you're talking about things that are relevant. And if you have no relevance, you have no loyalty. So if you're sitting in a room or you're online or you have people, fans and followers that are following you, and if you talk about things that aren't important to them, then that's not going to keep them engaged. That's not going to add value. Now, how do we do that? Well, first of all, I want to tell you guys, I want to give you a little tip. The best social media book ever written. And no, it's not my book, and it's probably not the book of anybody that you've heard speak over the last at least 50 years. Okay, this book was written as a little clue in 1936 by a gentleman by the name of Dale Carnegie, and it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And what's amazing about it is, to me, it's more relevant today than it was in 1936. It's also fun to read because of the references to things that were going on and happening in 1936. But the importance of it is Dale Carnegie talks about things that are so important today and seem like common sense. But to me, most people aren't doing it. My fear is that in social, people are getting less friendly instead of more friendly. So what does Dale talk about? He talks about calling people by name. Nobody, no word in any language is more beautiful to anybody's ears than the sound of their own name. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I always answer people by name when I can. Even if they don't list their name in their profile, I'll dig deep and try to find it. If I can't find it, I might use some initials from their Twitter handle just to show that I'm paying attention. I will look at their bio and mention something about maybe the town they live in or something about their interests. This is how you get people to know that you're paying attention to them, because we want to connect with thousands. It's very important, and that's how we're going to build our businesses. But we need to do it one by one. Now, you might sit there and say, how do we do that? I mean, how can we possibly connect with all these people one by one? Well, the truth is, you don't really have to, because most people don't want that one-to-one engagement. They're not going to jump into your feed. They're not going to leave a comment on your Facebook page. They're going to pay attention to those that do. And I call this participating vicariously. In other words, by participating via other people, watching them communicate with you. So you hear a lot of gurus, a lot of experts, and by the way, I want to make this perfectly clear. I'm not a guru. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy with opinions who's not afraid to voice those opinions and to try them out for himself and the companies he works for. So just to back up a second, I got my start in social or let's call it modern day social or current social platforms, because I think the world has always been social, and the minute we started getting email marketing and other things, we started being able to develop relationships at scale. But I joined a company called Elf Cosmetics, eyeslipsface.com, in 2008, just as all these platforms were starting to scale. And I had a lot of advantages there that gave me a chance to really experiment and learn about all these things. Now, first of all, I was selling a product to women, and let's make something perfectly clear. Write this down, tweet this out, don't ever forget this. There is no social media without women. It ceases to exist. Men do not communicate that way. Men talk at each other. We have no interest in what the other person is saying. We're just waiting till they finish so we can say what we want to say. While the other guy is talking, or woman, we are formulating our response rather than paying attention to what they're saying. You're never going to find a guy who goes into a store, takes a picture of a shirt, sends it to 10 of his friends, waits for the results to come back, decides whether or not to buy it, takes it home, and then his best friend texts him and says, nah, I don't think so. And now he's got to take it back to the store. It doesn't happen. So social is about women, and being that 85% of the purchases in this world are made by women, that's a good thing. Second of all, I was working for a family-owned business that did not want to spend money on media, so anything I could do without that cost was something they let me try. Third, and one of the most important things, was we did not have a corporate legal department. Yay! It meant that back in 2008, when everybody else's hands were tied, mine weren't. So I was fortunate that through organizations like the CMO Club, I got to know people like Jeffrey Hazlett, like from Kodak, and Barry Judge from Best Buy, and we would brainstorm, and I would get to try things out. And I learned a lot, and I learned it fast. And one of the most important things I learned is that social is a facilitator of relationships. It's not a relationship itself. These platforms are the places we gather. They're the places where we have an opportunity to learn about people and hear about people, but it's not the relationship. And I'll tell you how this hit me. I'm a divorced dad, and I don't get my daughters all the time. So when they're with me, I tend to pay attention, even as teenagers. And what I started seeing is my daughters weren't leaving their rooms. And I'd walk by, and there were 5 different screens going, and they were communicating with all different people. And I'd say, guys, don't you have friends? How come you're not going out? They'd say, sure, I have friends, Dad. Look at my Facebook page. There's 500 people there. And I would look at it and go, really? And I would point at one and ask, who's that? And they'd say, oh, I don't know. I think she might know Susie. And, this was very scary to me, and probably not for the reason that you would think. I trust my daughters. I wasn't really worried about people they might be meeting online. What I was worried about is that all of you, everybody in this audience, is behaving the same way. You're becoming less friendly instead of more friendly. Now, Facebook has done an amazing thing. They own the word friend. I mean, think about it. When you think about the word friend, do you really picture your good friend in your face, or do you picture a logo of Facebook? So it's remarkable what they've done. And to take it a step further, I will make this proclamation in front of a room full of VPs of marketing and above, and invariably a few of them will tweet out, does Facebook really own the word friend? Did they trademark it? Of course not. But what they've done is they've gotten into our head, and they've made us believe that clicking a button, that somebody that says they're a fan of our page is a friend. But they're not. They're just somebody that has given us the opportunity to become their friends. And how do we do that? We call them by name. We look at their bios. How many of you guys in your company have people assigned every day to go to the pages of people who follow you on Facebook, who are your fans, or to go to people's Twitter pages that are following you on Twitter and actually see what they're saying? Don't wait for them to come to your page. Go to their page. Have people assigned to do this throughout your organization. Report back on it. Find out what people are really thinking. Connect your marketing department and your customer service department. Have them speak to each other. Customer service is an incredible well of information about what people are talking about. Now, here's a company that gets it, JetBlue. JetBlue listens to everything you're saying. You tweet them now at JetBlue. I guarantee you within a few minutes, they will tweet you back. I have a great story about JetBlue that I'll try to get into quickly because I want to make sure that we stay within the time limits and all you guys don't have to stay overtime and miss any more of work than you already are. But many of you guys, might have heard of JetBlue having a big problem a few years back with planes getting stuck on the runway. Well, towards the end of that, and by the way, they made a critical decision that they were not going to try to repair that by putting out one-way advertising. They decided to do it via social media. They decided to start engaging and interacting, not throwing out offers, not throwing out discounts, but talking to us. Because guess what? Most critics, all they want to be is heard. Think about it. Your wives, your girlfriends, all they want you to do is listen. And if you do, it's amazing the results you'll get. Now, it's hard to do in a personal relationship, but in a business relationship, it must happen. So I'm on a flight in 2009 going to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. Many of you have probably heard about it, the largest interactive conference in the world, and my flight gets stuck on the runway for over 2 hours. Finally get fed up, whip out my laptop, throw in my hotspot, and I tweet out to JetBlue, hey, JetBlue, love you guys, but what's going on today? I'm stuck on the runway for 2.5 hours. Now, they get back to me within about 30 seconds, and the response now is boilerplate, exactly what you expect. Sorry you're having a hard time. We're doing everything we can to fix it. We'll be in the air in a few minutes. Well, to me, that wasn't good enough. I said, that's all we're being told by the flight attendants. I want more information. Little by little, they started giving it to me. They communicated with me. They explained to me that there was a problem with the luggage. What did it turn out? Our bags were on the New Orleans flight. The New Orleans bags were on our flight. So, not understanding the airline industry, I said, what's the big deal? Just take the bags from one plane, move it to the other. I even volunteered to get off the plane and help them do it. I also told them I'd get them 10 more guys from the plane and we'd move it. So again, instead of saying, no, we can't do that, they started explaining it to me. They started explaining how they needed a gate, how they can't move bags on the tarmac, how they need a union crew. And during this discussion, I suddenly get a tweet that says, hey, we've got a crew, we've got a gate, we're going to have you in the air in 20 minutes. So now, meanwhile, I'm feeding all this information to everyone on the plane. Two things is happening. JetBlue is making me a dynamic advocate, somebody that says, hey, these people are listening. And everybody else on the plane is participating vicariously through the information I'm feeding them, and they're making me a hero. So now they think it's over, but it's not. I say, hey, guys, we're going to get in after midnight to to South by Southwest. And if you know anything about South by Southwest, it's all about the parties. And we're going to miss it. So how about free drinks for everybody on the plane? Of course, now I get back to standard FAA regulations, say blah, 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 blah. I tweet back to them exactly that. Blah, 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 blah. We want to party. Now, after a couple of tweets back and forth, they say, hey, we can't give you drinks, but how about free movies? I'm not a difficult guy. I said, great. I tell everybody in the plane, everybody cheers. We take off in 20 minutes. We have our free movies. JetBlue, to this day, still has no Wi-Fi, although they tell me they're going to have it anytime before the end of this year in their own proprietary system, which is supposed to be high speed. Yay. I'll believe it when I see it. But I land, and the first thing I do is I whip out my iPhone, and I tweet out, hey, at JetBlue, you couldn't solve my problem, but kudos for engaging me. About a month later, I'm on a panel at the CMO Club Summit, Chief Marketing Officer Summit, with Chief Marketing Officers from Fortune 500 companies in the audience, about 100 of them, and I'm on a panel with guess who? Morgan Johnson from JetBlue. Now, he doesn't know me. We've never met. I've never met him. He's talking about how they engage with people. I look at him and say, I have to give you kudos. He freezes, stares up at the screen, shakes his finger at me, and says, oh, my God, you're that guy. You're at Ted Rubin. You're the drinks guy. And I look at him just incredulously, and I say, how do you know? And he says, because I was tweeting with you. Back then, in 2009, JetBlue had an escalation policy and made sure to get the right people on the phone who could answer questions. To this day, they have 27 to 30 people in their social media department who are still connected to people in the company who can answer those kind of questions. And I can't tell you how much it's paid off for them. They've built their brand with it. They've got social insurance with it. When they had another problem in 2011, people gave them a buy when they told them there was nothing they could do because they had a gag order from the FAA. And you never heard it blow up in social because of what I call social insurance. Dwayne Reed gets it. Look at that number in there, people. 1 million plus followers on Twitter. Dwayne Reed is a local chain of drugstores in the New York area. Strictly New York area, 256 stores, owned by Walgreens that has over 8,000 stores. When I started working with them with Collective Bias, so I want to be clear about that, this was our account, they had 900 followers on Twitter. We took their strategy, we had them reach out to their consumers, hear what their passions were, find out that these people love New York. They didn't want to hear about a drugstore chain, they wanted to hear about life in New York. Started sharing that with them. Combined it with a strategy of bloggers creating content that was valuable to the people following them, connected it with Facebook and Twitter, and lo and behold, their following started growing astronomically. We communicated with them, we shared value with them. Of course, there were times where we threw out discounts and sold things to them, but mostly we engaged them. And they have case studies that they've done with Twitter and outside that show how they've driven sales directly at retail using their social channels. Trust is built and based on interaction, consistency, and being true to your word. If you want people to feel good about you, you have to interact with them. Think about meeting people. Think about what happens when you go to a party, when you meet someone at the PTA, when you meet the parents of one of your kids' friends. You don't get them to like you by saying hello or by them seeing the car you're driving. You build trust by being there all the time, by always saying hello to them, by doing one of the things that I love most, always having a smile on your face. Start listening. And I like to say, don't just listen, but hear. Now, I'm told proper English says don't just hear but listen, but I insist it's the other way around. Because for me, it's about actually opening yourself up to hearing what people have to say, especially when you're a company. Brands insist they know their brand. And I will tell you right now that most of the brands you guys work for, especially if you're a legacy brand that's been around for a while, you know your retail consumer, hands down, hands down. You know your digital consumer. Digital is becoming traditional. Can you believe that? They're calling it traditional digital now. But do you really know your social consumer? What drives them? I guarantee you it's different than what you're seeing in the other places. And here's another thing. It changes all the time. When we were working with Dwayne Reed, we didn't make everything the same. We would listen and evolve our strategy. First, everyone wanted to see New York skyline every morning. It was huge. People would send in photos. Our followers would send in photos. Bloggers would send in photos. But then it became more about activities in New York. Things were happening in New York. It evolves and it changes. And by the way, it can go back to the old thing. And the beauty of social is you can try something different every day. And truth be told, that's the main reason most companies are afraid of social. Don't believe that it's because they're worried about what people are going to say. That was probably a few years ago. They're starting to realize that those people are going to say those things, whether they're involved in the conversation or not. What they're really afraid of is the hard work that social represents. It used to be the fourth quarter would come around, the chief marketing officer would gather his minions, he'd say, let's make up a plan for next year. You'd get all sorts of different ideas. He'd approve a plan right before Christmas. You guys would take 2 or 3 weeks off. You'd come back in January and all you'd have to do is execute. But it doesn't work that way anymore. Now you have to put in the hard work every single day. You have to make it about them. You have to make sure, because there's no excuse not to be listening and hearing what it is about them that's important. You have to start asking again, how can I serve you? Do you remember when you used to walk into a local store, or maybe you still do now, and there's that local merchant who every time he sees you, he's got a smile on his face, or she's asking you, what can I do for you today? Sometimes it's not even about what their business is. You start talking about other things. Start asking, how can I serve you again? And please, aim for ongoing engagement. Too many companies think the relationship ends the minute somebody presses the follow button. Guess what? That's when the relationship starts, not when it ends. And the other thing is, how often do any of you guys get into a social conversation on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, the conversation going on and you walk away. Somebody walks in your room and you just stop. Would you ever do that in the middle of a conversation with somebody in a room, on the street, just in the middle of your words, just walk in another direction? Finish your conversation. Say, excuse me, I have to go. Make a post. Yes, you might say, well, a lot of people won't see that. It's in my Twitter feed. First of all, they can go back and look at it. Second of all, you're going to build a reputation for that. And guess what? Your brand is what you do. A reputation is what people remember. That's probably on a later slide. I always throw it in there, but sometimes I have to throw it in sooner. And know the people in your audience. Go to what I was talking about before. Go to their pages. Read what they're doing. See what their likes and dislikes are. Don't wait for them to post it on your page. Most of them are never going to do that. Focus on the relationship first. Tell them, I want to be your friend, before they say they want to be your friend. Consumers don't fall in love with your brand and become brand advocates by being pushed into sales. They fall in love with your high-quality product. And remember, if you don't have a good product, none of this really matters. They love excellent customer service. Start connecting customer service to marketing. Don't make your customer service about how quickly do you get people off the phone. To me, that's the best time to talk to somebody. It's like my teenagers. I have teenage daughters. I have to get them to engage with me. It's not easy. You know when's the best time to do that? When they want something, when they want money. Now, I don't leverage it and say, I'll give you the money if you do this, but I know that they're going to listen to every word I say. And if I want to hear what they're doing with that money, or I want an explanation, they're going to give it to me. Well, when people come to customer service, guess what? They're coming to you with a problem, and they're going to listen. It's the best time to market to them. Going back to what we were talking about before, aim for ongoing engagement. Your goal in building a brand advocate needs to be that you're communicating with them regularly. One-time purchases are just that, one-time purchases with little ongoing sales value. What do we all care about? 3 words your CEO, 3 terms your CEO will always be able to concentrate on if you want to talk about the value of building relationships and advocacy. Lifetime value of a customer, average order value, and frequency of purchase. These things are what come from when you engage with people all the time. A one-time tweet, a quick Facebook posting, or an email here and there is an announcement, not an engagement. Real engagement takes time, attention, and overall effort, all of which pays off as your customers become powerful brand advocates. Start putting more energy and attention in your give column than in your take column. In a world of take, we've got to stop underestimating the power of give, particularly in business. People aren't expecting it. Think about this with your consumers. Think about this with your employees. Your consumers will recognize in a heartbeat if you're simply trying to get them to buy something from you. Stick around. Be there for them. Do for them without expectation of anything directly in return. That doesn't mean you want something. It means that you don't have to have it now, and you don't have to have it directly from them. Start looking in the mirror Ask yourself, would I want to be my friend? Think about the old adage, do unto others as that you would have them do unto you. It's no longer just a recommendation for life. It's a requirement of business in this social media age. Make no assumptions. I guarantee you guys, sit in your meetings, sit back, make believe you're sitting above the meeting and listen to what's going on. When was the last time you were in a meeting with a marketing executive who was a 45-year-old guy saying, I would never buy that? And there's somebody like me sitting in the room saying, well, good, because you're not a 28-year-old woman. It's insane. You guys are all making assumptions. You're jumping in. You're saying what you like instead of remembering Marketing 101. Market to your target audience. And by the way, there's a word that I don't like anymore either. Target audience. We all use it. We need to use it. It conveys a meaning that's very important. But instead of targeting consumers, I want to think more about matchmaking. Bringing things to them that work. Ask first. Listen next. Ask again. Then act and integrate it into your learning. And not only that, but continue asking. Don't be afraid. Don't think we already have this, so we don't have to ask anymore. Ask your brand advocates what they want. Have you ever done that? With social media, we have unprecedented ways of requesting information from our consumers. And notice I didn't say gathering. I said requesting. Ask them what they think of your product and how it does and does not mean to meet their needs. Ask them what's missing. Don't be afraid to do these things. You'll be surprised. Find people, find advocates, find influencers who are willing to answer your questions. Not everybody will. Listen to them. True listening requires a willingness to place consumers' opinions above the brand's own, and guess what? Yes, usually biased view of yourself. After you ask, and make sure you listen, what are your consumers saying? Like I said, go to their pages. Don't wait for them to come to your page. Don't think that most people will come to your Facebook page and tell you what's going on. Sure, you get a lot of haters there. By the way, love critics. I seek them out. I want to turn them around. I don't reply to haters. But start really listening and start hearing your consumers. When they know they're being heard, it's amazed how quickly they'll become advocates. Same thing goes for your employees. If you start doing for them, if you start helping them build their brands, the average job length today is under 3 years. And that means the average person coming out of college will have 12 to 15 jobs. Start letting them know that you want to help them be better for their next job, and you'll be amazed at what comes back to you as a brand. Help your advocates be heard. Now, you guys all see this. You've got buttons on your site, something they can click to tweet something or maybe add it to Facebook, but do more than that. Give them a platform. When I was at Elf Cosmetics, we let a lot of our advocates post blog posts on our blog. We give them a place to help build their own brand. We had 250,000 visitors a month to our blog. Can you imagine what that did for our advocates and what it meant for them to be able to be heard there, to be able to write blog posts, to be able to say what they were thinking? Make it easy for them. Don't be afraid, because, by the way, they will criticize you sometimes, and that's a good thing, because that shows just how legitimate they are. Be authentic, and don't just act it. Now, this might seem obvious, but authenticity is on the verge of becoming just another buzzword, in my opinion. True authenticity, not just using that word, often in your tweets and posts, which all you guys do, but true authenticity will set your brand apart in the highly competitive market we have today. The only way to be authentic is to actually be authentic. Say what you mean what you say. It makes it very easy to answer questions because you know exactly what you're talking about. And use social media to serve, not just to sell. Ask your consumers, like I said before, how can we serve you? And put actual customer service processes in place using social media for instant and ongoing engagement with your customers. Pay attention to them. Address their needs early, often, and guess what? Do it publicly, because that's really important. Don't take them to DM. Don't take them to email. Answer them publicly so everybody else can hear your answers. Okay? And really important, make sure your social team and your customer service team are on the same page and communicate regularly. You'll be amazed at the input that your customer service team can give to your marketing team. Innovate, don't stagnate. The marketplace is lining up behind you. You guys got to make people feel comfortable about saying what they think, not to be afraid to give ideas. Here's a message to businesses. Change your framework, change your future. Start letting your people, your advocates, your consumers help you build your brand. Social media drives engagement. Engagement drives loyalty. And loyalty correlates directly to increased sales. ROR, return on relationship, and the hashtag I use is RONR, return on relationship. Yes, there's another story behind that, but we don't have time to go into it. Feel free to reach out to me anytime at tedrubin@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to tell you the story. Because if you're only focused on the money, you risk overlooking the people. ROR is about dollars and cents. To me, return on relationship and advocacy is about people. It's really simple. Just be nice. Social media value has to go beyond the campaign. Your companies have to start realizing it's not about click to buy here. So when someone asks me, what's the ROI of social? I ask them back, what's the ROI of trust and what's the ROI of loyalty? Every CEO, everybody in the C-suite, including your CFO, your chief financial officer, understands, again, lifetime value of a customer, average order value, frequency of purchase. These can all be increased and will be increased when you use social as a loyalty platform and speak to them every day. Because awareness equals revenues. You let people know more about what you're doing, you wrap a social shell around everything. So you take your PR, you take your advertising, and you socialize it. You will build more awareness, which will lead to revenues. Differentiators allow you to build margin into what you do. Remember that word, margin? When we weren't selling things at a loss and trying to make it up in volume? Like Guild Group, like Groupon, like all these other Fab.com. You ever notice that these companies are never becoming profitable? They can't because there's no margins. How do you get margins? You add value. You go to the corner store or a smaller supermarket because they always take care of you, because they've got great products. They open up another lane when you're waiting online. That's a differentiator and something you're willing to pay more money for. And authenticity equals loyalty. These are all measurable and all will lead to increased sales and profits. One thing I want to leave you with before Richard starts talking to you is I'd like to let you know, think about this. Relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ted. That was really, really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Ted's going to be hanging around until the end till we have some Q&A. So do drop your questions into the chat box below and we'll make sure we get to those at the end. I'd like to hand over to Richard Jones, CEO of EngageSciences. And Ted, if I could just ask you to mute your microphone so you don't have too much feedback, that'd be great.
Excellent. Well, hi everybody. Nice to have a chance to speak to you about the power of advocates. And I guess what I'm going to be doing is to basically address a bit of a conundrum, and that is, how do you actually market at scale but keep the context of the relationship that we know from Ted's speech drives the returns? How do you market at scale but keep the context of the relationship? So before I do that, just for folks that may not know anything about us, we're a social marketing activation platform. We basically work with some of the largest brands, media entertainment companies in the world, and so that's really what forms our experience. So let's just sort of step through and get to the nub of the point. Well, I don't know whether you guys know this guy, Donnie Schultz. He is considered the father of integrated marketing. He's an author, he's an academic, and he came out with a paper recently called Killing Brands Softly, which had a pretty interesting point, and it's basically saying that we're in an era of declining brand scores, and he looked at data over a 10-year period and basically correlated that to the proliferation of mass media, in particular the rise of mass media. So the question really is social media killing brands? Well, no, it's not social media that's killing brands, but it is becoming harder for traditional brand marketing to actually establish a footprint, because those brands were built on traditional mass media brand marketing, which was much easier when you had a much smaller set of media channels to go after. Now, with the rise of social media and proliferation of media in general, it's much, much harder to actually drive those traditional brand marketing programs. So, we think, brands are going to have to change. There is a change that's happening around the boardrooms of major businesses today. And you need to sort of think about what is actually the future of mass media. Well, perhaps the future of mass media is actually the hashtag in many ways. That's how we can group conversations across multiple different platforms, from social TV to every major social network. They're all adopting the hashtag. That is becoming the single way that we can start to group conversations across platforms. So in that era, there are certain things that we can actually do. Now, coming on to Ted's point, for us, it's very much a part of social marketing to ensure that we're doing it in order to create that relationship, to build advocacy. The end goal of the relationship should be increasing amounts of advocacy and increasing amounts of advocates on social channels, because that's really what's going to drive you the word of mouth. So it's really not about capturing followers. Now, to put some data behind that, we have quite a privileged position in the sense that we work with hundreds of mainstream brands and media companies around the world. And part of our platform, we have a social marketing database, which basically allows us to track every interaction that a fan has with a brand through the course of that fan's lifetime connecting with the brand. What's interesting is that typically it's about 4.7% of a brand's fan base that generates 100% of the social referrals. So now there's plenty of other value in that other 95%, right? They're connecting with you, they're establishing a relationship, they're starting to consume your content, they're open up in a dialogue. From other studies we've seen there's about a 20 to 30% more likelihood for them to buy to you if they're engaged with you on social channels. So there's still value in that other 95%. But if you're thinking about anything in terms of an acquisition strategy, the underlying KPI is about how you reach more people, how do you actually build your social following in order to put them into a funnel to drive out more advocates. It's actually your existing advocates that generate all of your results. The problem is most of the brands don't actually know who those average Joe advocates are, that 4.7% of their fan base, and they don't have frameworks in place to actually work with them. The other thing that's interesting to note is that each of those advocates, that top 4.7%, on average, give you 176 times the reach of a fan that is connecting with your posts on an ongoing basis, that is interacting with your content, your campaigns, and your messaging. So you get huge amounts of reach by actually increasing that top percentage of advocates by a single percent. Downstream, in terms of socially referred commerce, in terms of social marketing reach, huge impacts. So it's really important that brands actually start to think about how they can actually get closer to their advocates, how they can actually increase their number, and how they can actually amplify those advocates. How can they make them become heard? Well, one of the easiest ways to do that, and do that at scale for brands, is to be able to start to listen to what brand advocates are actually saying across a multiple set of different social networks. So, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, wherever fans are actually connecting, commenting about you as a brand, your products and services. So being able to set up listening in order to filter in what those fans are saying and actually get down to interesting bits of content that your advocate community are actually curating that, filtering it, and then publishing it across your digital portfolio into your websites, into social ads, into campaign microsites, wherever it may be, is a very, very simple way for you to be able to, at scale, put the voices of your fans and advocates at the heart of your marketing. So in our system, it's very, very simple to set up those feeds, to set up basically how you want to filter and find the voices of fans across multiple different social networks. And then you can actually just basically decide, how you're going to curate that, what's trusted sources, what needs pre or post moderation. It's very, very simple to actually set up the rules that gets to the heart of the things that your advocates and fans are actually saying. And once you've done that, you can then publish that curated content, all the way across your digital marketing. And we think this is really key. I think when you look at the majority of brands' websites today, they're pretty much static content. They're the brand's content, the content that they want you to see. But as we see the hashtag being rolled out across all major social networks, as you see the advent of social TV, brand websites are going to have to be social hubs. They're going to have to change beyond all recognition from what they are to actually today. And it's how much more powerful for a brand than actually to change, a large part of its website from being static content that it's trying to get you to connect with to actually featuring the content of the voices of its fans and advocates and how they're incorporating that brand into their lifestyle and making that the hub of the content on the website. And we've seen that anybody that does that increases the dwell time on web pages made up of curated social content from fans and advocates. They increase the dwell time to about 300%. And then if they actually input any promotions into that curated content pages, they actually get a 60% increase on people clicking on those call to actions. So you can already see that the behavior of people and how they're interacting with brand websites is changing if brands are actually socializing their website to really make the voices of their fans and their advocates front and central to the content that's being actually shown off. And it requires a change in infrastructure as always. Traditional content management systems are built to manage traditional content and not actually to manage social curated feeds from across the web. So our platform basically plugs that gap. I'm not trying to replace anyone's CMS. It's something that you can easily add on to certain pages of your site that you want to make into that curated social content experience, that social hub fit for the modern social consumer as they're coming to your site from multiple different social networks. And if we think about why that may actually be important moving forward, think about this. Think about the fact that what we're really trying to do is connect marketing across channel, from online marketing to offline marketing, from social TV to billboards to display ads on the social web. Wherever people are actually coming through and connecting with your content and coming through to your website, we want that experience to be fit for the social consumer. We want to actually put the content that's been created by fans and advocates at the heart and center of that experience that people are clicking through to. We want to be able to engage them in interactive social experiences that actually allow us to start to capture social profiles, that allow us to build out a social marketing database. So we're starting to basically build information in about the people that are connecting with us on social channels and on our website directly into our CRM strategies. So we're starting to be able to understand in a more granular level the types of people that are connecting with us on our marketing activities. And so, for us, we believe that every company needs to have a social marketing database that's feeding into their CRM systems. They need to be able to understand and record every connection that anybody has with them on social channels. So as they're connecting with your content, your campaign, and your messages, we want that to be about the individual. So we create a record for everybody when they actually connect with your content, your campaigns, your messages. And when they reconnect over time, we're appending their behavior to that record. So you can start to basically build out an understanding of who the people are behind the conversation. And that information can be made available to community managers and others that are starting to connect with people on social channels. So they're not just a random individual. They're somebody that they know something about. They understand the past interactions that individual has had with the brand. They understand the types of things they've done, connecting with the content and campaigns and messages that you've got out on social channels. So you can start to understand where are the groups of value within your audience and start to ensure that you're taking everybody through that journey to becoming an advocate, because that's the goal, that's the value of the relationship. And so, you need data in order to be able to do that, to arm your employees with the information they need to help people along that journey. And then we really also need to be looking at, for our advocate community, how are we starting to build that brand army? How are we giving them the rewards and the incentives and a structured program to get closer to us as a brand, to participate in content, to earn VIP status? These are all the types of things that we can do as a brand to actually reward our advocates, to reward people for getting closer and closer and building that relationship with us. So, for us, we've actually got part of our platform that allows you to basically set up these advocate programs. You can think about, giving people points or badges or rewards for various different levels of engagement over time. Every individual, has a profile that they can see, what they've done, what they've got to do, challenges, unlocks, and that type of thing. If they get to certain levels, perhaps they can participate in an experience that's only there for people that get to a certain, VIP status. These are all the types of things that we think brands need to be thinking about in order to really take advocate marketing onto the next level. So, for us to kind of recap, we see that there's a bigger picture. We believe wholeheartedly in the return on the relationship that Ted was talking about. But we actually think that there's something that brands could be doing in terms of putting in a framework to actually facilitate that process. So, how do they actually start to market at scale whilst keeping the context of the relationship? And so being able to listen and amplify and find the voices of your fans and advocates from across the social web and actually start to publish that into your website and other areas of your digital portfolio is a first step. Being able to engage people on an ongoing basis with different types of activities that leverage advocate programs, gamification, incentivizing and rewarding fans for getting closer for you. That top 4.7%, they do so much for you. We need to start to adjust some of our budget. Instead of chasing celebrities all the time, for endorsements, we also need to focus on our 4.7%, because at scale, that's a big number. EA has 100 million fans. That's across their portfolios. That's 4.7 million people that are crazy about EA, that will do many of the things that EA wants them to do. That's a huge asset for a brand, and they should be starting to invest more in actually building out that asset, building programs to address that community and helping them be the voice of the brand in the wider community. And then all the while, we want to be able to basically profile that activity. So we're starting to learn about the people that are connecting with us so that we can start to segment our database and understand the types of people, what they're actually doing, and start to be able to personalize the marketing that we drive back to them, not just on social channels, but on any channel. And social data unlocks a way for brands to be much more personal in their communications on many channels. So that was basically a very quick kind of 10-minute rundown on the EngageSciences view of activity. So now I'm just looking at the various different questions that we've got coming through on the Q&A. Please drop any that you want into the channel. Ted, if you can unmute your microphone, then we can start to take a few of those questions. So maybe just to, Ted, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. All right, so actually maybe I'm just going to kick off with a quick question for you, Ted. There's obviously a lot of information now being put out there in the fact concerning Twitter. I mean, we're moving to a major IPO. What's your thoughts on the Twitter IPO and how who's going to win the race to be the kind of global social town hall? I'm particularly interested in the fact I see Facebook making a lot of changes to start to open up more features that are similar to Twitter in many ways, things like adopting the hashtag. What's your thoughts on the Twitter IPO and what changes you think that's going to bring to the industry over the next 12 months or so?
I don't think the changes will be any different than from before they went public. I don't like to look at it as a race. I don't think this is between Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I mean, and remember, people forget to mention YouTube, which is an incredibly valuable channel for all of us to be leveraging. But, look, everybody knows Twitter is my favorite platform. And why? Because my head is like a Twitter feed. And for me, it's a publishing platform. I try out ideas. I talk about things. Twitter is about real-time news. In my opinion, Facebook will never be that. Now, never is a difficult word to use. So obviously things can change. But what I find is that companies get things baked into their DNA. The same way Google will never, in my opinion, be a social company. They're a tools company. They're a search company. They make way too much money to disrupt their own business by really doing what's necessary to make social valuable. And for me, Facebook is more of, it's a place that we store things. It's a place where we have all our photos. It's a place where we have a very different kind of conversation. They live for longer periods of time. For me, Twitter is about quick and active communication. It's about real-time news. It's about knowing what's happening every day. To me, the smart people are no longer opening up the Wall Street Journal in the morning. They're opening up Twitter. I mean, and if they're doing it smart, I mean, it's not happening a lot in the C-suite, mainly because, truth be told, they're not that smart. They're stuck in their ways. They think that, why would I do that? It's just for kids. They haven't even opened themselves up to understanding it. But if you have the right feeds and you know what you're looking for, Twitter provides information that Facebook will, in my opinion, again, will never provide. It won't be the way people look to Facebook for the information they're looking for. I think Twitter has a long way to go. I think people underestimate Twitter because they look at the amount of people that are either active according to Twitter or the way Twitter is growing. To me, Twitter is a seeding medium. It's a place where you put information that finds its way very actively to other platforms, like the blogging world, like YouTube, like Facebook. And I also find that for me, and Twitter, it's a place where influencers are, where people that share information very actively in other places find themselves. I mean, the blogging community is deeply entrenched there. So I think that the IPO is just going to add good things. I mean, look, every company does things we don't like somewhere along the way. But I think that Twitter is on to bigger and better things. I think they're going to grow dramatically. I think we have to recognize that most people don't use Twitter as a place to communicate. They use it as a place to find information. So just a quick note, and I've written a blog post about this. I talk about it all the time. Don't undervalue the lurkers. Don't undervalue the people that are not actively engaged in social the way you think active should be, meaning tweeting at you, corresponding with you. Understand that the vast majority of people on every social channel, but especially Twitter, are not actually using them to engage, but they're reading what we have to say. And to me, those are the most important people. I want the people that are listening much more than the people that are shouting at me.
So yeah, great points, Ted. So I got a question here from chat, which is pretty interesting, which is basically addressing, engagement isn't easy if you aren't cool as a brand. So maybe you could address that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Richard? I didn't really get what you said.
Yeah, just saying one of the questions in the chat is that, well, it's a statement that I think we should probably address, that engagement on social channels isn't easy if you aren't cool. So just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, I like, that's a really important point. And you know what you hear from a lot of experts and gurus is, well, you have to have more comments on your Facebook page or on your blog. Did any of you guys ever notice that Seth Godin doesn't allow comments on his blog? The most widely read marketing blog in the world, and he doesn't allow comments. You know what he says? He says, this is my house. I'm not asking you to come in there to tell me what you're thinking. You're coming here to hear what I have to say. Okay? Now, I don't say I necessarily agree with that, but let's take it to the Facebook page or Instagram, or where people are expecting that you need to have all what you call this engagement. I think people engage by watching how others communicate. Now, this has really come to light for me recently. I recently left Collective Bias as of the end of August. I was there for 3 years. I'm getting out there a lot. I'm speaking at a lot of places. I'm seeing a lot of people I haven't seen in a while, and I will tell you how amazed I am at the dozens of them that know everything I've done over the last year and a half, and not once have they liked my page or liked a comment. Not once have they engaged or put a comment in there. Not once have they let me know that they're actually lurking in there. But they know that I've been to Sydney, Australia. They know that I spoke in the Cayman Islands. They've seen all my talk about brand advocacy, about return on employees, and empowering your employees to power your brand. They repeat back to me almost everything I've published over the last year and a half, and I've never once known that they were actively there. And those people are influential people. They're all out there. They're CMOs, they're CEOs. They're talking to people in their workplaces. So understand that even if you don't have something sexy, if you put out valuable information, okay, if you give people things that can better their lives, if you're a pharmaceutical company, but you publish information about how to stay healthier, people will read and come back for that information. And by the way, it's not always about that. Don't forget that we have this device called a smartphone. Everybody has smartphones, right? Everybody has phones. But meanwhile, we barely use the great features we have on that phone. So if I asked you guys to raise your hand and ask how many people have smartphones out there, my guess would be about 90% of the audience would raise their hand. And if I asked you what I was holding in my hand, you'd all probably shout out, "Oh, that's an iPhone." And if I asked you what's the biggest word in iPhone, unfortunately, most of you would say "I," but it's not. It's phone. And guess what? That phone comes with apps. All you guys have apps on your phones, right? There's a really cool app that comes pre-installed on everybody's phone that most of you don't even know exists. If you press a button, you get a keypad on there with numbers. And if you press the numbers in a certain sequence, people actually answer the phone and you can hear their voices. Don't be afraid as a brand to start talking again to your consumers. Social platform, the telephone, one of the first ones that came about. And again, you think it doesn't scale, but it does. Because people will get off that phone call and announce to the world that you just spoke to them. So there's lots of ways to engage that most of us seem to be overlooking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a kind of case in point around, if you're not a cool brand. I was actually at a telephony company this week that basically targets migrant communities with SIM cards for cheap calls back home. Now, that's not a Nike brand. They're not trying to present themselves as cool, but they clever enough to understand that they're targeting certain ethnic communities, and the content doesn't have to be about cheap telephony. The content can be about those communities. It could be about the moments of community within those communities. Eid or Diwali or whatever it may be. They're the types of things that get people to actually want to speak to each other. So the content in many ways can be about the community, and it's about starting that conversation and thinking about how you can change your marketing to facilitate conversation rather than to blast stuff out and try and shut conversation down. And that's a fundamental change in the way brand marketers need to start thinking.
Richard, if you wouldn't mind, I see a comment here by Rachel Morley about, at what point are you stepping over the line with consumers? Do you mind if we address that for a moment?
Yeah, go for it.
And you talk about, and by the way, Rachel, you can step over the line. It doesn't have to be a low interest product. It can be any product. But, I think a lot of that goes back, and Johnny Jensen gave a great answer here in the chat area, that it has a lot to do with listening. It's about hearing what people have to say. I pay attention very closely to my own Twitter feed, to whatever I do in any company I'm working with. And I pay attention to people that may complain, may say, "Hey, you're talking too much." And by the way, I always tell people I want the feedback. I want to hear what they're thinking. And then what I do is I gauge, how many people are interacting, how many people might be saying that we might be doing it the wrong way, and I listen. And if I feel that, if people are pushing back saying, "Hey, either you're tweeting too much or you're posting too much or you're posting and not responding," here's another way. So, you can be stepping over the line by posting but never answering your people. How many brands do you guys engage with that you go to their Facebook page or their Twitter handle after they post something and they never respond? What amazes me even more is how many social media companies do that. Do you ever try to contact Facebook or Twitter? They're the least social of any company out there. But more importantly, what I see is companies posting things and then not responding to the answers. I see social media quote-unquote gurus who, if you go through their Twitter feed, they never respond ever to any of the people who ask them questions or talk to them. So I think it's about listening. I think it's about paying attention, and I think, again, Johnny got into that pretty well with the answer he posted here.
No, absolutely great point. So there's one question that's directed at me, which I definitely want to take from David Sedman, saying, how do companies use a tool like EngageSciences if they don't have the experience of EngageSciences in terms of the social space? And that's a quite an interesting question, because all sorts of brands that we work with are on very different journeys in the experimentation, the time that they've really invested in social marketing. And so one of the things that any company like ours has to do is to provide a services layer around providing best practice, around being able to define what's the steps that you're going to take based on where you are as a company in your journey. So everybody has a dedicated customer success manager that will actually work with them to define that journey. and start to help build that set of deliverables, which is going to get them walking, then get them running, starting to move forward on their journey. So it's definitely not about here's some technology, off you go. It's all about the services layer as well to make sure people are successful. So I just wanted to make sure that that was brought up. So what else have we got? Maybe just time for one last question. See what we've got. Anything there from the stream? Right. Okay. A number of brands have had bad experience and challenges with apps on Facebook. Do you think apps are dead? From Peter Jameson. So I'll tell you what, I'll kick off on that one and then maybe hand over to you, Ted. So it's a very, very good question, I think, because since the timeline change on Facebook, where brands used to be able to say that an app was their default landing page on Facebook, that's now changed, and the default landing page is the actual timeline itself. So that basically has stopped one of the ways that brands had for getting traffic to a particular app. Now, I guess what I would say is that if that was your strategy around apps, you probably had it wrong in the first place. Because an app, at the end of the day, what is an app? It's an interactive social experience, and an app can live anywhere, but it needs traffic. So it's a campaign. It's something that needs people to see it in order to interact with it, to share and invite others to that experience. So like any bit of marketing, you need to think through the user journey. You need to think about how what are the goals, what are your aims, how you actually start going to get traffic to it, how you're going to seed the campaign, where does that what data you want to collect, where does it actually feed into a wider user journey that you might be planning along, a longer sort of time frame of marketing activity. So, definitely thinking about more than just, it's a landing page will give you results. I have to say that there are increasing numbers of folks that are looking at driving out interactive experiences, apps, if you want to call them that, on websites, because they're looking to really connect multiple social channels rather than just what the default was previously of trying to push stuff just into a Facebook page. I think, moving forward, as we see the call to action being a hashtag across platform, the interactive experiences that you want to drive out have to live somewhere. And the obvious place for that, I think moving forward, is going to be websites. Some people will still want that to go into the Facebook page, but if they do, they've also got to think about how they actually promote those experiences to their wider audience in order to facilitate the seeding of the campaign. If apps were dead, then Spotify would be worried, and Deezer and many other great experiences are out there on the social space. I don't think apps are actually dead, but I think certainly some of the easy money around apps as just landing pages without much thought is definitely over. So people need to think a bit more clearly about what they're actually doing with their campaigns and the type of interactive experiences they want to make available to their audience. Ted, I don't know whether you have some thoughts on that.
Well, I typed in a comment earlier when that question came up, and my comment is nothing's dead till it's dead, and nothing's over till it's over. So I think people waste way too much time worrying about what's next and not executing what's now. So, my point being that, I sit in meetings all the time. I sit on panels, I'm at conferences where people declare Facebook's dead. Look at their numbers. They went down last month. And I sit there and I laugh. First of all, I think most people make these comments because they want attention. Second of all, I think most things live way beyond the life expectancy that we have from them when there's something that's so vast. So do I think apps are dead? Of course not. I totally get your point. I think the low-hanging fruit is over, the easy money. But, easy money tends to disappear pretty quickly in any of these things. So for me, it's about experimenting. It's about trying things. Granted, you need an overarching view to decide where to put your marketing dollars. But I think that you have to always think about your business, your company, your followers, and the feedback you get, rather than looking for generalizations that are coming from people making proclamations about things that are over and that are not. So I just keep testing things. So I think there are plenty of apps that are real valuable. I think that, Facebook and Twitter are both going to evolve dramatically. I think that any day now, somebody new is going to jump into space that's going to surprise a lot of us. That's what happens all the time. And I just, look, I get out there and I participate. And I think that's one of the most important things for any marketer. Look, I play with Vine every once in a while. I hate the damn app. I think it's worthless. I think on a scaling basis, spend your time on Instagram, spend your time on YouTube. But do I continue to keep trying to figure out ways to use it effectively? Of course I do, because it's out there. And anytime something new comes out, I'll take a quick look, I'll try it, and then if something works, I'll keep trying it. So, I do the same thing with whether it's Twitter, Facebook. I have people that work with me that come up with ideas, mostly young people, and when they give me something to try, even when I think it's a stupid idea, I try it. And I've been remarkably surprised. So I'll give you a simple little thing. I put out photos of myself in different ways speaking, and I have a lot of, as you see, one-liners or quotes that I write that I use a lot. And one of the people working for me, who's remarkable, her name is Hannah Erlinson. I want to give her credit for just about, without her, I wouldn't have been able to do anything that I do. She helps me syndicate and publish, but she came up with an idea of taking some of these one-liners and putting it on photos and publishing them on Instagram and syndicating them out to other platforms. And I thought it was kind of silly. I'm like, who's going to want to see quotes of my pictures? Oh my God, people went crazy. They asked me to make them into postcards. I put them out every day. They get the most interaction of anything I post. So I keep my mind open to trying anything, even things that are old school, because you'll be surprised how they work.
Yeah, it's a great point, and just something around kind of, people do like to proclaim stuff, and it can be completely out of whack with what's really happening if you dig into the data. A great example of that is at Social Media Week here in London. I was doing a panel with a number of folks, and we were on the Q&A afterwards, and a lady stood up and said, Facebook's dead. It's all over. The future is Twitter,
Sure.
Or something to that effect. And I had Nokia, who one of our clients was on the panel with us, and they've been talking about, very interesting talk about how they'd recently broken a record for a brand having the most number of retweets about a brand tweet, which was recently they had something like 47,000 retweets. When Apple brought out the new phone that looked very much like it had been copied one of the previous Nokia phones, and this has gone wild. 47,000 retweets around Twitter. It actually just broken a record from, I think it was Oreos that had it previously, and they were very proud about this, and they were talking about that, and it was all going to fit into a session about kind of in-net network activation and what's happening with the hashtag and the adoption across platforms and stuff. Great session, but I had to say, well, hold on a minute here, because we've just had a fantastic, example of the power of Twitter for a brand there with, 47,000 retweets, which has broken a kind of world record for brands. But at the same time, Nokia ran a very simple, competition app on their Facebook page, their global Facebook page, and it generated 850,000 invites and shares in 72 hours. You put that compared to this world record in retweets from a brand, and that gives you some sort of idea of the relative scale of these platforms. That may well change in a year, 18 months, but we're a long way from saying Facebook are dead, and I think that's all just people believing hype. We've got a lot of money in the system now with the with the Twitter IPO, and just as we had that with the Facebook IPO, and everyone was saying Google's dead and Facebook's in the future just a year ago. Yeah, we're going to have the same, stuff going on with the Twitter IPO. The point is, as marketers, don't get sucked in, don't believe it. Look at the data, and make your decisions for the next 12 months based on that.
And don't forget, make sure to be where your customers are. Don't expect them to come to where you are. Do a little bit of research. Use tools like EngageSciences tools to find out where are the people that are already. But remember something: your current customers are the most important people. I think the data is it costs 4 times as much to acquire a new customer as to keep a current one. So make sure you know where they are, where they're consuming their content, what's important to them. And that can be in any number of places. And guess what? If more of them are reading print magazines, then you damn well better be there. Don't get won over by what's the latest and the hottest. Make sure to know where your consumers are. And also, I relate this to my teenagers again. Communicate where they want to communicate. My daughters do not want to pick up the phone. I will call my daughters, and within seconds, I'll get a text back going, "What?" with an exclamation point. And I know it's got attitude in it. And they're letting me know that they heard the phone ring, they were available, but they didn't want to talk to me. And for a while, I tried to push past that, but then I realized Communicate with them the way they want to communicate. And guess what? Now they answer me all the time. And I listen to them. My daughter says to me, Dad, you can follow me on Instagram and you can like anything you want, but do not ever make a comment. And the minute I once slipped and made a comment, she let me know about it immediately. And I backed away. So communicate. Don't take people on Twitter and try to communicate with them on Facebook. Don't answer somebody that emails you with a direct message. Communicate with people the way they're communicating with you.
That's a great point, and I'll leave you with one stat from one of our customers, which I think is a fascinating point when kind of applied to the return on relationships. So we work with Rakuten, the third largest e-commerce company in the world. They're trying to take on eBay right now to be on the second largest, huge Japanese conglomerate with presence all around the world. And they basically did a study where they were working with us, and they were trying to work out the ROI of social channels. And rather than kind of look at it from purely a kind of acquisition or marketing perspective, they just looked at what's the value of existing customers that are basically connecting with them online via email for 6 months before converting on an EngageSciences campaign and becoming a connected member of the social community. And they actually saw that there was a 24% uplift in revenue coming from that customer group from before they were engaged on social channels to after. So, the biggest single return that many companies can have is actually just establishing a social relationship with the customers they already have. At the end of the day, who else do you want to get closer to? Who do you want to establish the best relationship with? Your customers. So, I think that ties in nicely with the return on relationship.
Absolutely, and I'll jump in and tell you that there is one other group that you want to be at least as close to and possibly closer, and that's your employees. Do not forget about the power of your employees. Help them build their personal brand. Help them build their influence, and I guarantee you they will power your brand.
No, absolutely. Brilliant. So I think we're pretty much there, run out of time. I know we've overrun a little bit. Thank you very much, everybody, for staying with us. Great attendance. Hopefully you found that useful. This session will be recorded. We'll make it available to everybody that joins. So feel free to share it with colleagues and co-workers. So lastly, thank you very much, Ted. Very, very good session. Much enjoyed your company. And thank you for everybody for attending.
And everybody, I posted my email address and my phone number in the chat area. Feel free to, reach out to me anytime. I'm also doing a Twitter chat later today about small business and how to leverage social at #TalkBiz, B-I-Z. So love to have any of you there that want to join. And like I mentioned earlier, just remember, this is the age of influence, where anyone can build an audience, affect change, advocate for brands, build relationships, and make a difference. So jump in and start making a difference.
Thank you very much, Ted, and thanks everybody for joining.